Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Neighbor constantly parked in my driveway, I made sure she can't leave again." Huge mistake. If you live in a city, you know just how tedious trying to find a parking spot can be sometimes. Hell, even if you are not in a city, parking can be hard to come by. This is especially true when you live in a neighborhood that is just littered with cars, like mine. Unfortunately, there are no limits on how many cars each household can have in my neighborhood, and this usually ends up being troublesome because out of 29 houses, there is only about 23 parking spots. Some of us have driveways, but boy, let me tell you, it sure is annoying when you have a driveway that you cannot even back out of because some douchebag is constantly blocking it. See, here is the thing. We were a family of 4. Me, my wife, my stepdaughter, who just recently got her license, and our 5-year-old son. My wife and I shared a car, as she worked from home so did not really see the point in having her own car when we could just share. Or she could borrow our daughter's. So, between us, we only had 2 cars. This was perfect as this was all that fit in our driveway, and we did not have to park out in the street. Except, one day a black car was blocking our driveway. It was a weekend, and we were not planning on going anywhere, but that was beside the point. I always felt like parking in front of someone's driveway was disrespectful. Whoever was parking there, could clearly see that there were 2 cars parked there, and eventually they would have to come out. But that was just that problem, we did not know who this car belonged to. It seemed like a new car in the neighborhood, and that meant either someone moved in, or someone bought a car that they had no space for. The next morning, the car was gone, and for the next few days we just assumed that this person was just parking there for a few hours while they visited a friend or something. We did not really continue to think about it, however, that quickly changed. Because several days later, we came home to find the black car back in front of our driveway. I was annoyed, because I thought this car parking there was only going to be a one-time thing. Now, we were coming home after a long day of being out and about, and we could not pull into our driveway. So, we parked in front of our house, which made me even more pissed off. They had the space to pull up and park in front of our house. That still would have been annoying, but I would have been a lot less pissed off. Now I could not even get in my own driveway. I decided that I was going to try to find out who this car belonged to. However, this also did not happen for a couple of more days. And the damn car kept parking in front of our driveway, regardless of if our cars were parked there or not. And every time we would find the car parked there, whoever owned it was nowhere to be found. The car would be parked there in the night, and then would leave in the morning. We always missed them, until one day we were able to catch a girl driving away in the car. I did not get a chance to confront her, as she was already driving away. But, not to worry because yes, she returned, and it was only a few hours later. And I had enough. I figured I was not going to get a chance to confront this girl anytime soon, so I decided to deal with it the best way that I could. I would make sure, without words, that she or anyone else would never park in front of my driveway again. I had a giant roll of this special black plastic film in my garage. Honestly, I do not know for what. It was for a project around the house. But I decided that I was going to wrap her car in it to enrage her. So, I waited until it was the middle of the night. I went to the garage, lugged out the giant roll of black film, and began wrapping it as thickly and tightly as I could around her car. I was careful not to break her side view mirrors or anything like that. Although I was pissed, I really did not want to cause harm to her car or damage it. I just wanted to get my point across. I was sure she was going to be pissed, but hopefully my pettiness would shoo her away from my driveway. However, imagine my surprise when she came knocking on my door the next morning. She was actually very apologetic and explained that she was trying to sell her old car, and until it was gone, she did not have space in front of her house to park. I calmly explained that she could park in front of my house if she just asked, but it really bothered me that we could not even pull in and out of our own driveway. Besides that, she lived down the street so we did not know her that well and could not seem to catch her to talk to her about it prior. In the end, she agreed to stop parking in front of our driveway and was actually very patient and sweet about the whole thing. She was not as much of an *ol as I thought. The next story is titled, My Failure to Plan is Now Your Problem. TLDR. Dirty trash can full of poop needs their car inspected. Waited to the last possible moment and was forced to wait over 2 hours to get seen. Then his car still failed inspection from his own doing. Your failure to plan does not constitute an emergency on my part. My failure to plan is now your problem. So, I work in customer service in the automotive industry. As part of the services, we offer guests we perform a state-mandated car inspection so people can register their car with you the state. It's a simple process that can take about 15 minutes if you book an appointment with us. But every month we get flooded with people who forgot to do the inspection on the last week of each month. It is a mad dash for last-minute appointments to fit people in before they're late. Now, we don't make money off this type of service. In fact, it's a state-set fee and we realistically lose money doing this inspection on labor cost. I preface this to state that doing these state inspections does not benefit my shop, but we do it because it helps our customers. Front door opens to a male Karen coming in on a Friday afternoon midday. This distinguished gentleman, we'll call him Tim, walks in at around 1 p.m. in the afternoon and slaps his keys on the countertop, informing my front counter teammate that he needs an inspection now. Now understand that even though all of our appointments were booked up days ago, we will still bend over backwards to help someone out. We totally get that things don't always go according to plan in life, so we do what we can to help. That is, as long as you're a nice person. When you start trying to dictate how we're going to help you, that does not fly at my store. Tim decided that today he was going to do exactly that. After we advised him, he can either wait almost 2 hours to try to work him into a slot as we process our already scheduled appointments, or book an appointment for him next week. Tim let us know that booking an appointment the following week after the deadline was not an option for him. But he's got time right now, so he's going to generously give us 2 hours of his time, and we need to figure out how to get him in. Cue malicious compliance. I stepped in to take over the conversation for my front counter staff who have been dealing with him up till now. Okay sir, we're happy to help. I'll get your keys out to the technician, you just have a seat and make yourself comfortable. Immediately I walked the keys out to my technician with explicit instructions. After explaining to my tech that Tim is acting like a dirty trash can full of poop, I gave the express instructions that we will not even touch his vehicle until 2 hours have passed. Mind you, as Tim sits in the lobby stewing, I have the pleasure of servicing several other customers who set their appointments days ahead of time. 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and even a 7-minute inspection for an all-electric car. Things are flowing so smoothly for all of the appointments who did things the right way, and it's showing on Tim's face. After the first hour, Tim finally has the courage to speak up. I really appreciate you trying to work me in, but do you know how long it's going to be? No Tim, you don't get to be nice now and try to expedite your vehicle. You don't get to be nasty to my staff and still get your way. Sorry Tim, we're still trying to get it fit in, like I said, about 2 hours before we can see the truck. Mind you, the lobby's totally empty and all customers have already been serviced early. It's perfect. Fast forward another hour and his multiple attempts to make small talk to amend his horrible manners, treatment to one of my staffers. And his car's finally being brought into the shop bays. Then moments later my technician walks into the lobby with a giddy smile. Boss, his truck needs wipers to pass inspection, they're torn and fail the vehicle. Passing on this wonderful news to Tim, he agrees to have the tech install some because he of course did not bring any of his own. At this point I feel quite satisfied that Tim's learned his lesson with a little additional help from the universe in him needing to also replace wiper blades. But apparently the universe was not quite done teaching Tim a lesson. His car still failed the inspection. The last part of the test is run by a computer that reads the internal control modules of the car. It's a totally automated process that can't be tampered or affected by the inspector. The only thing that could interfere is if the car's had the battery replaced and those control modules have been reset. But that's exactly what Tim did. Hours before coming to see me he replaced the battery and cleared those exact modules. So, at the end of the day Tim was his own worst enemy and failed his own car. Having to book an appointment for the following week. But with a little help from the universe, he hopefully learned a very valuable lesson, that service workers are not your slaves. And to always tip your waiters. The next story is titled, An Entitled Karen Ran Through 2 Stop Signs. I always enjoyed listening to these stories, but never have I ever thought that I would be contributing to this sub with a story of my own. I'm a laborer and have been working on a site near the countryside for the past few months, building a subdivision, and on the day, I had traffic management duty. Basically, a coworker and I were tasked to make sure that no cars crash into each other while we worked on the road, but due to it being a rural area, the road we were working on was very quiet. Anyway, during the job one of our trucks needed to enter the site, so my coworker flipped his sign to allow him to enter the site. I noticed a car coming from my side during this time, but I wasn't worried about it as the truck had priority as it arrived first. But before the truck had a chance to enter the site, the car sped past me on the opposite side of the cones, where cars usually wait for me to let them through, even if I never swapped the sign around. I radioed my coworker to let them know that a car, I found out soon after that it was driven by an entitled Karen, is coming towards them, and as I did this she slowed down and yelled at my coworker, before speeding off. At this point I was shocked. Did that just happen? Was all that I could think about. At this point my foreman came over and asked me what happened. I told him about how the woman just ran my stop sign, and he asked me if I was sure that my sign was on stop. I told him that I was 100% sure, and he went to call the police and told me to let him know when she came back. After he left to continue work down site, there was a period of nothing. During this time I was thinking about what I would do if she did come back before we finished working on the road, when my coworker asked me, through the radio, if the upcoming car was her. I looked and confirmed them that it was in fact her when she ran through his stop sign. Now I was annoyed. She ran through 2 stop signs at this point, so when she was near, I walked up to her car and pointed my sign towards her in annoyance. She did slow down slightly, but she only said some unknown words as she still had her window up and sped off before I could let my foreman know that she came back. Now luckily, we saw where she lived as the site entrance was close to the end of the road. The foreman came back, and we let him know that she ran another stop sign and that we knew where she lived. After a while the police arrived, and my foreman went up to the officer to give his statement on what was happening, and the officer went to talk to the Karen. After a bit the officer came back to let my foreman know what the situation was, and sadly, she was only let off on a warning but was told that if she ran another stop sign that she would be issued a ticket. Not the most satisfying of endings, but, it being my first entitled person encounter, I had to share it. Thank you for taking a few minutes of your day to read my encounter. The next story is titled, Cashier doesn't care if a person is dying, she's hungry and wants her break. So, in my past stories, I've shared some of my experiences dealing with customers while working at Walmart. This time I thought I'd tell you about one of my cashiers I dealt with as a supervisor at a Save-A-Lot grocery store. So, this particular day starts off just like any other day. We're taking care of customers. I'm handling things on the floor and in the office, the usual type of stuff. The cashier that is the subject of this story is one of my closers for the night. She already has a reputation for being lazy and selfish, so we're already not big fans of hers. During the day a young man looking to be in his 20s comes in and goes right to the restroom. This Save-A-Lot is a pretty small store, so both restrooms are one-person restrooms. You go in, lock the door, do your business, and then it's the next person's turn. This guy was in there for a pretty long time and others were waiting for their turn. I had been busy with customers, so I wasn't aware how long people were waiting until a customer came to me to complain. So, I go to knock on the door and ask if everything's okay. No answer. I go into the office to get the keys to check on this man. As I open the door, I see him lying on the floor unconscious with a needle sticking in his arm. I get one of my other cashiers to call 911. So, we're following their instructions. Paramedics arrive, proceed to work on him, and revive him. As they're taking him to the hospital, the paramedics inform us that a few more minutes and he wouldn't have made it. So now I'm doing my best to calm the cashier that called 911 down because she's going into an anxiety attack when I hear my name called. The following exchange takes place. EC equals entitled cashier, me equals me, of course. EC. I was supposed to go on break 15 minutes ago. Me. You saw what just happened. That man almost died. EC. So. You could have sent me after the ambulance got here, but instead you were talking to Jania. Me. Look, I'm not going to go back and forth with you about this. You're mad. Get over it because I'm not going to apologize for anything that just happened. The world doesn't revolve around you. So, she goes on her break. And we all get back to work. And if that wasn't bad enough, she didn't lift a finger to help with any of the closing tasks and had the nerve to ask me to leave early. She would get fired a few weeks later. The last story is titled, Union Overtime. TLDR. If you want to force your employer to abide by a contract, make sure you understand the contract. I worked in a factory on afternoon shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. In another department were two lazy guys. Their department was pretty much fully staffed, and their job was basically to clean the department, make sure raw materials were available for the next day, that sort of thing. On Fridays, the day shift were often asked to work overtime on Saturdays, starting with the most senior employees and working down the list. These two guys were never asked, usually because by the time they arrived for their Friday evening shift, there were enough day shift volunteers to cover what was needed. They discovered that some of the day shift volunteers had less seniority than they did, so they kept their mouths shut, and for months they recorded each Saturday that a less senior employee worked. Then they filed a grievance, stating that they missed out on the overtime because they weren't asked, and should be compensated for all those Saturdays. The company said, okay, then cited a clause in the contract that said they were liable for only 30 calendar days, as it was the employee's responsibility to bring any wage errors to the company in a timely manner. In that past month there was one Saturday that a less senior employee worked a Saturday, so they paid each of these guys a day's worth of OT. Then the company transferred these guys back to day shift. They objected to the transfer and lost, as it was ironclad in the contract that the company has the right to assign employees where they were needed. Both had preschool kids, and both had wives that worked days. Dad would watch the kids while mom was at work, then a babysitter or family member would come in and watch them for a couple hours between when dad left for work and mom returned home. Not anymore. They had to arrange daycare for the full day at considerable expense. Mom had to leave early to drop off the kids, and dad had to pick them up on the way home. But they did manage to profit that single day's worth of overtime. Thank you for listening.